First of all, good morning to all of you, and thanks for the interest. You are literally from all over the world, not only Italy, France, Spain, India, Uzbekistan, United Kingdom, USA, Pakistan, Portugal, Latvia, Lithuania, Tunisia, Vietnam, China, Singapore, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, and so on, Kuwait, China. So many people. That's very good, and we are very pleased. When I say we, I mean the Italian Society for the Ethics of Artificial Intelligence, SIPEIA, which is a new, not only scientific society, but also an advocacy organization dealing with the opportunities, but also the problems raised by AI in our society. And for the third year, we are organizing this worldwide online course for PhD students, but also open to many people with other professions. The teachers of this edition will be the usual suspects from SIPEIA, Professor Maurizio Mori, an expert of bioethics, one of the fathers of bioethics in Italy, who proposed the creation of SIPEIA, Tiziana Catarci from University of La Sapienza, Rome, Giovanni Sartor from University of Bologna. He is a lawyer, while Tiziana is a computer scientist. And this year we also have a guest star, Ioannis Pitas, a professor from Greece, who is the chair of AIDA, the AI International Doctorate, let's say, Academy, coming from a European project which joined us, and the course joined the program. Okay. The schedule you already know. Just mind that the lesson on the 14th of May will be split in two parts, one from me and one from Professor Pitas, and some of the lessons are at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You can hear me, right? Just to be safe. Concerning please give me some feedback. Can you hear me?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Concerning the exam, because as I said, it is also a PhD course. You have, first of all, to attend, no, I would say not all, but most of the lessons. And you have to prove that you attended by filling the form I just put again in the chat. Or at least to put your name in the chat and we collect it, but it's better to have the form. Unfortunately, last year there have been several discussions from people who wanted to give the exam, but there was no proof of attendance. The exam is somewhat different from standard exams. The task is to write a small newspaper article on a topic concerning the risks of your research, or some other topic if you are not making research on AI. The best articles will be published on the magazine Intelligenza Artificiale, magia.news, which up to now is only in Italian, but soon it will be also in English. and it is a cultural magazine about AI. So the article you have the article you have to write if you want to give the exam must be directed to the widest public, people who does not know anything about AI but still want to understand what is at stake, what are the risks. I hope this is clear. The magia.news magazine has also a newsletter where you can register to get bi-weekly updates on the articles. We publish editorials from experts. And I hope some of your exams will become editorials. And also we have daily articles by the editorial board of the news of the magazine. If there are some questions, please put in the chat. International attendees can also receive the certificate. Yes. So there are three kinds of people. People who just follow the course and don't need anything. People who need the attendance certificate, and people who needs to give an exam and receive an approval from us. The last two categories have to give a proof of attendance, as I said, either filling this form or writing in the chat that they are present. If there is some problem, just write me to my email address. I put it again, but you have already, and we find a solution. Okay, any other question? No? Good. But we will have some more time at the end to discuss. Another thing is the lessons will be recorded, and it will be published on the website of sipeia.it, which is also in English. And last thing before starting is that I would like to have the most interactive possible lessons, even if we are many. And so just stop me if you have some question, or even better, some comments, some counter argument, either writing in the chat, but just open your microphone and interrupt me and ask a question. And we can start, since there are no more questions. Mind that the course is not ethics of AI only. We want, but it is ethics and AI, because we want to face two sides of the problems. One is ethics of AI, how ethics can be applied or should be applied to AI, and how difficult is this problem. But also vice versa, especially Professor Mori, who is a philosopher, a bioethicist, will discuss about how AI affects ethics itself. Because it would not be the first time that new technology creates a profound change even in the philosophy, in the ethics itself. It happened surely from the 70s, when biotechnologies, from abortions to clonation to CRISPR technologies, had an impact on on ethics itself, and this led to the birth of the bioethics discipline, which is still something ongoing with many open problems and with also divisions in the society on different perspectives of the problems, from religious one to political ones, and so on. And probably the same will happen also for AI. We will not instead talk about another meaning of the possible meaning, which is machine ethics. That is how to program machines, in this case AI algorithm, to behave in a desired way. I also worked in the past, when I was working on the topic of multi-agent systems, more on the legal point of view, how to make AI systems to behave from a legal point of view. Professor Mori will discuss the difference between ethics and law. Please don't open the microphone unless you want to say something, because you are too many for me to stop you clicking on the open microphones. Thanks. Machine ethics takes different forms. If you think at the guardrail approaches to LLMs, or the constitutional approach of Anthropic with their LLM Claude, to another popular idea, which is algorithmics in Italy. And while at the same time there are opposite views, because, for example, part of the Catholic community cannot accept the idea that something not human can be endowed with ethics. So this is the restriction of this course, and the general problems addressed from different perspectives: computational, computer science, philosophy, and the legal point of view with Professor Sartori. But when we start talking to apply ethics to AI, we must already ask ourselves some questions, because we do not have ethics specialized for all technologies. Probably we have communication ethics, we have bioethics, as we said, but the AI must be justified as a suitable problem requiring an ethical approach. By the way, Professor Mori will also talk about what is ethics itself. So for this first lesson, which is quite a general one, we leave it undefined. But surely we feel the need to have ethics of some technology when a technology creates risks. And in the case of AI, and this will be the focus on this first lesson, surely there are many opportunities, but also many risks and fears. Someone has even existential fears for the human race. And also, besides highlighting the problem, it should be possible to find possible ways of addressing these problems, and how the differences of AI with respect to the other technologies lead to the need of different solutions. For example, some scholars like Luciano Floridi argues that you can import from bioethics the famous 4 principles of medical biomedical ethics, maybe add some other principle on explainability, and the job is done. Other people argue in a different way. We will not focus on this course on just describing which are possible ethical guidelines for AI, because like the advocacy organization Algorithm Watch recently argued, most of these ethical guidelines, which are many, a couple of years ago were 160, more surely now are even more, are just paper tigers. Why? Because they are too general, too unspecified. They don't provide a guidance in practice. And even if this could be the idea of relying only on principle, like for example in part of bioethics is done, could be a good idea, with AI is more difficult because you need technical personnel to map the principles in actions, and it is rarely done, and rarely there is such an expert interdisciplinary with interdisciplinary knowledge people. So there is the risk of AI ethics washing, as it is popular now, the term green washing from the point of view of from the ecological point of view, having claiming industries claiming that they respect the environment, but sometimes or most of the times is just a greenwashing. They just pretend to, and maybe failing to stop AIs can cause as a self-fulfilling prophecies the harms that they want to prevent. Then there are no enforcement mechanism at all, and if you look, we look at reality, large companies are full of people who are part of the Professional Association of Engineers, the IEEE, but notwithstanding this fact, they do not often behave in an ethical way. As we will see later, there is also some disregard for their the ethical committee they sometimes put on, and then they dismember later. So we don't start from this point of view, but another one. We start from the problem. And before starting, let me summarize which are some of the messages from the part of the course I'm teaching. First of all, there is the aspect of rhetorics, which is often underlooked. AI is not an agent, is not something that does something by itself. Even if newspapers and even scholars often start to sentences like AI will do such and such, some positive or negative verb. So don't use this kind of sentences. Look at what it is behind. And behind there is the fact that AI is not purely a technical problem. AI is part of an economical, political, social system, which is at its base. And this is the system that must be regulated or must behave in an ethical way, not just the poor AI who is not endowed with any agency by itself. Then the other important message is that AI raises ethical problems, okay, otherwise we will not be here, but it is not true, even if many people claims this, that all problems created by AI or created by other technologies can be solved by a technological fix using AI or some other technology. There are many problems that in principle go beyond beyond the technological aspects. They are inherently political or social or economical. And this is particularly important because AI impacts all sides of our lives and society. It impacts the economy, the politics, the relationships among people. And as I said, probably AI will lead to a change in ethics itself or in philosophy itself, in our view of the world, in the epistemology, in the cognitive, in cognitive science. Since we have a very interdisciplinary audience, computer scientists are not the most of the people attending the course. We have philosophers, many lawyers, and people from other disciplines. Let me make a very brief point on why we are talking here about AI and risks of AI and ethics of AI, even if every one of you knows AI it's already old. It has born at the Dartmouth College in 1956. The term from John McCarthy is from the year before. This meeting, there were the most brilliant people and fathers of AI. Here, for example, you all know the Nobel Prize Claude Shannon. There have been many decades before AI could be profitable and could be a problem. The reason is that for decades, the approach has been, the mainstream approach to AI has been different from the current one. The idea at the beginning was mostly the so-called symbolic AI. The idea that you can take inspiration from the little we know about our mind, the functioning of our mind, and we try to program by hand machines inspired to the functioning of our mind to behave in an intelligent way, at least for very minimal tasks. For example, you all know the taxonomy of living beings by Linnaeus, where you have a tree where all mammals are animals or all bears are mammals, and from a computational representation of this information, like a graph like here, or like a formula, the form of a formula, logical formula, or a rule or whatever, we can let the machine make further inferences. For example, that a bear is an animal, even if there is no explicit direct information, like Aristotle was suggesting with the syllogism 2000 years and more before. In the 80s, the idea became popular in the medical field with the idea of expert systems, where you could read books, interview experts, extract from them rules. If you have fever, then you have cold. If you have red dots, then you have measles or whatever. The rules represent the general knowledge of a doctor, and an inference engine connecting the rules could start from the evidence of a doctor in front of a patient, and the expert system could make a diagnosis. Maybe with rules which are sophisticated, with exceptions, with probabilities, and so on. But as you know, this didn't work and led to the so-called AI winter till the last decades. The pros of this system was that they didn't work so good in practice, but when they provided a diagnosis, they also provided an explanation, because they gave the set of rules concatenated, activated, representing the reasoning that a human expert would have done. Or similar way with decision trees, which model the intuitive idea that when we address a problem, we make questions and subdivide the problem. How old is the patient? Less than 71. Then does he have breathing difficulties? No. Does he have neurological problems? Yes, and so on. And following the tree, you will find a possible distribution of probability on the diagnosis, or and at the same time an explanation. Or in the field of natural language processing, that is aiming since that age to create systems for understanding and producing language like ChatGPT. Today, the idea was to take the grammatical rules, to formalize them. A sentence is made by a noun phrase and a verb phrase. The verb phrase is made by a verb and by the object predicate and other predicates, and so on, using so-called parsers to try from the words of a sentence to reconstruct the grammatical structure of the sentence, then using, for example, semantic networks like the first one I've shown, or logics, also would try to interpret the meaning of these sentences. But as you all know, this led at most to something with like Alexa or Siri with their annoying interactions, even after adding statistics and more and other tools. So we must distinguish within the field of artificial intelligence the past approach, the one of symbolic AI, which failed, and in the next lessons we will see that probably there was a reason for this failure, a principal reason of this failure, and another subset of artificial intelligence, which has a different paradigm, starting from the examples instead of the knowledge and trying to learn automatically. This approach was already foreseen at the birth of AI, but only in the last 10-15 years there have been a huge boost thanks to deep learning technology, which is at the basis of self-driving cars, ChatGPT, and medical diagnostics, and so on, so forth. The idea behind machine learning and then on deep learning is to use a different computational paradigms. While our computers, our smartphones are all based on a central CPUs, maybe with 12 cores, but the idea is to have a center with a very high computational power accessing to a memory. There has been suggested a different approach since McCulloch and Pitts in in the 40s, before AI. We are just at the time there was the term was cybernetics, and the idea was to mimic in a very shallow way the functioning of our brain. While I say shallow way, because we don't know much about our brain. For example, I guess less than 1 year ago, there has been discovered that besides neurons and glia, there are even a third kind of cells in our brains, which was something under the eyes of everyone. And we know very few about what happens in the synapses, thanks to the neuroreceptors and so on, the chemics, but also the electronics of these cells. But the idea is, instead of having a central powerful CPU, we have a network, a very connected network of more simple computational elements that takes input on the left, x1, x2, and xn, and the neuron just make a weighted sum of the input, where for each connection between neurons there is a weight. It applies a nonlinear function and forward the activation value, typically a number between 0 or 1. But the idea is to have many layers, and all where each layer is connected to the following ones. So in the 80s, there was already active the neural paradigm that I just described, where at most we have 3 levels, input, output, and an hidden layer. It can be proved that 2 layers are not enough to compute interesting mathematical functions, but in the recent years, there has been a multiplication of hidden layers, up to 50 intermediate hidden layers, a lot of them, with networks of hundreds of thousands of neurons and hundreds of trillions, that is thousands of billions, of connections. When you say, oh, there is a new, you say, you read in the newspaper, oh, the new 100 trillion parameters large language model by someone, it means 100,000 billions of connections between the new artificial neurons. And the idea is to give an input. Take, for example, here you see face recognition system. As input, you give each one of the pixels of the image an output, you get the classification. And in the middle layers, the network identifies more and more abstract features, from edges to identity features like eyes, noses, and so on. And this happens without any knowledge on the domain. Let's make a simplified example. A diagnostic system taking X-rays of the brain. So you have the digital images of the X-rays, you have the diagnosis by a doctor, but you don't take into account the explanation. So you feed to the network the first example of the training set that now can be made of millions of examples, and you put each pixel of the image in one of the input neuron. At the first time, at the first attempt, the network, which is a tabula rasa, completely blank, will give a random result. You compare the result with the diagnosis of the doctor, and you apply learning mechanism. Just to get an idea, you penalize the path coming from the input to the wrong output, and you repeat this mechanism for the first example till the network returns the right result, and then you go on for all the training set. And magically, the network is so powerful that it is able to generalize over the training set, and given a new image, it is able to give a right diagnosis. An example that has not been shown before, because maybe the patient was not ill at that moment. And these systems are getting closer and closer, or even surpassing the performances of human beings, without knowing what is a brain, what is a blood vessel, what is a tumor, or whatever. So it's really powerful. And just to make some funny example, the problem is difficult. It's difficult even for a layman to understand, to identify, to distinguish a Chihuahua dog from a blueberry muffin. Imagine how difficult it is for a doctor to make a diagnosis on a digital X-ray. Let's start with the first problem, then we will go back and see whether these problems can be resolved by technology in the future, or whether even these problems are really problems, or instead are maybe features of the thing. Please close the microphone, as I said, but unless you want to say something, at that point you can interrupt me at any moment. First problem, as one can imagine, if the system learns from the world as it is now, it will learn also all the undesired features of this world, and not just will reflect the world, but it will even amplify some biases that are present, prejudices that are present in the training set. Let's make a simplified example. Assume you want to make a deep neural network to understand whether a picture of someone cooking is a male or a female. In the training set, you just download all the images in a kitchen on the web, you get probably a great majority of women cooking in the kitchen. Why? Because of economical, social, traditional biases in the society. And the network will learn what it has shown to it and even amplify this. So it will behave poorly when it has to recognize the picture of a male in the kitchen, probably misclassifying it as a woman. And as I said, the problem is not just reflecting the society. The problem is that it is also amplify the differences, the imbalances in the societies. For example, if you take Google image search and you ask for CEOs, you get 11% of men, while actually there are 27% of CEOs who are women. So there is this amplification. If you want to know more about this problem, a nice movie to watch is Coded Bias. It's a documentary about Joy Bulanwini, an MIT researcher on AI and art, who narrates her story. She was trying to make a sort of magic mirror with a webcam and a face recognition algorithm that it was not working well. At some point, making some trials of a artistic performance, put a white face a white mask on her face, and the algorithm started working better. And she realized that the problem was because she was a black woman. And the algorithm, given that are trained probably on most images of white people, worked, and white and male people and Caucasian people, it worked worse with people of darker colors of skin, and even worse with women with dark skin. Another more classical lecture reading, is Weapons of Mass Destruction, not Mass Destruction, by Katie O'Neill, a mathematician, where the subtitle is already quite impressive. How big data increases inequality and threatens democracy. Big data, because the book is already some years old. AI was not yet the main hype. Still, it is very interesting. In particular, she examines the feedback loops created by these systems that bring back in the reality the biases that they have learned, they amplified, and having a negative effect on people. But there is another problem that, like the bias problem, probably cannot be solved technologically. And it is the fact that since these systems learn without any knowledge programmed into them, but just learn from the examples, they cannot provide explanations. As I said, expert systems, symbolic AI, was able to provide answers, but they were not well performing. So when you classify an animal, pictures of animal, and you get the result that probably the image is the one of a cat and it is correct, you don't know why the system classified the cat as a cat, not before of the fur, whiskers, and so on, so forth. Doesn't know why it didn't classify it as something else. When it fails, you cannot explain, mind that this is a cat because it says meow, and so on. You cannot explain to the network why it went wrong. And the only way is to give the new wrong example in the training set and retrain the network, which will behave better, but again, without providing an explanation of why now it learned to classify the cat correctly. We would like probably to have something more. A neural network, an AI system that works well like a neural network, but that it provides a suitable explanation of its reasoning. And we will see in the next lesson that probably this is not only possible, but maybe we really, after all, don't want this, even if it sounds strange, because there are, I guess, tens of thousands of researchers in AI working on the explainability problem, getting a deep neural network to provide also an explanation of the reasoning, and even, as we will see, and Professor Sartor will explain, in the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, and the AI Act of the European Union, and other laws, there is written that AI system must provide an explanation if they are used to take decisions on citizens. And a clue that there is something beyond these can be seen from some anecdotes about AlphaGo. AlphaGo is the system by DeepMind, the UK startup of the Nobel Prize, Demi Sassabis, and that got the Nobel Prize, and for another system we will see later, AlphaGo was able to win against the best champions of Go, you know, the board game, which is a complexity in the mathematical sense of the term, much higher than chess. And what is the anecdote? That these masters, beaten by the AI, besides even desperate, as you can see here, KGE, they said something like, beautiful. It seems to play against an alien, which maybe it is misleading because this sentence supposes that there is an alien that has a logic different from us. When you play chess or Go or whatever game, you try to figure out which is the strategy, which is the logic in the mind of your opponent. And they couldn't find one inside the mind, so to say, of AlphaGo. And this is something very important, but we will see later. Besides, we have to face the harsh reality between AI. And here the suggested reading is Atlas of AI by the sociologist Kate Crawford, that who proposes us a sort of experiment that you can do yourself. Just take Google image search, the part of the search engine for returning images, and try to write artificial intelligence as a keyword to search. What do you get? I leave the floor to you. You can all try and tell me, because you probably get, every one of you get different results, but more or less are of the same flavor. What do you see? Just open your microphone. Which kind of images does it return?
I have a brain and robots.
Exactly. Probably blue and white, very reassuring.
Blue, white, yeah.
Oops. Here it is, artificial intelligence. Here you are. Yeah, they are not the same because it is old, but an old slide, but more or less it's the same for everyone. So Kate Crawford asks herself, what does not Google show to you that is more interesting? And there is a long list that probably will take all the remaining time of this lesson. First, oops, no, it goes by itself. It doesn't show you the pollution created by lithium mines. Lithium, the metal which is at the basis of the batteries of all our devices, from smartphones to electric vehicles. It does not show the disruption that this pollution creates to the people. Here we are in Southern America. It does not show that rare earths, the metals at the basic of the electronics of our devices, which are not rare but very polluting, come often by war zone, where young people is exploited in harsh conditions. But you also, it was obviously not in the book of Kate Crawford, which is like 4 years ago. It even is directing the geopolitics of our age. You will remember the attempt of President Trump to make President Zelensky sign an agreement for 500 billions for extracting from the Ukrainian mines these metals, or again the wish to annex Greenland. The invasion of the M23 movement from Uganda of Congo, of the region of Congo, where there are again rare earth mines and so on. So AI, as we were saying, is not just a technology, is a powerful, even geopolitical, has a powerful geopolitical drive. Then Kate Crawford says that Google search doesn't show us the harsh condition in Eastern Asia, where people, mostly women, work in the electronic factories producing, for example, our beloved smartphones. In some cases, almost slave condition. It doesn't show the huge data centers hosting AI servers, nor it doesn't show that very often these data centers are using non-renewable sources of energy, like coal. And again, not foreseen by Kate Crawford, there is a connection now between AI and the return of nuclear power. Does any of you recognize this picture? It's not just a nuclear plant, it is a specific one, and tragic one.
Chernobyl?
3 Miles Island?
Write in the chat, please. There are, luckily, no, the third one, almost right. There was another smaller episode, exactly, 3 Miles Island, near New York, where there has been some problem, I guess, in the 70s or in the 80s. And the news is that some big tech company wants to reopen 3 Miles Island nuclear reactors to feed energy to the data centers. It seems that in Texas there is some new law proposal that if you want to open a data center, you have to open also an electric power plant, maybe nuclear one. So again, technology affects economy and indirectly geopolitics. Changing topic, Kate Crawford says that Google doesn't show us that AI is not really artificial because it is based on human information and human work. For example, all the pictures that you uploaded in your beloved social media that has been hijacked and used for training algorithm. And if you were tagged, they also know your name. Here you have another case, a mugshot of a poor woman arrested several times in her life. This was from a data set for learning how people get older. Obviously, without consent, probably you allowed clicking on the new version of the term of services or some social media, and you allowed the big tech to exploit your image for learning. But also you need, besides images, people labeling them, because medical diagnoses are made hopefully by doctors, but if you have to label a data set of 1 million image by hand, saying this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a chair, and so on and so forth, you need cheap work. And this is taken obviously using the gig economy workers, for example, via the Amazon Mechanical Turk. Here, the image below is of a protest from this kind of people that labels data set, correct transcriptions of audio, and so on and so forth, very poorly paid and without any work warranty. Then, besides labeling, you need to filter out what you don't want to be seen or fed to an AI algorithm. 2 steps. First one is the fact that you will not dare to enter any social media app if there were not hundreds of people in developing countries and poorly paid who filter out all the horrors that we ourselves upload on the social media. The Cleaners is a documentary, another suggestion for you, where some dozens of these people are interviewed, and they explain that they are poorly paid, they work a lot, they have no psychological support. For what? For removing, some people were telling, dozens of beheading and other killings of people. Violence against women, men, animals, children, hate, and so on and so forth. You really would not open Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, TikTok, if it was served raw to you and if it was not for these people. And even with these people, you know that sometimes some horror happens, because some weeks ago, probably it happened also to you, Instagram started regurgitating horror movies, real movies. A student of mine tell me that she has been showed an elephant passing over and killing some person, and so on and so forth. Did it happen also to some of you, what has been shown to you? Which is obviously incredible, because there are the cleaners removing these images, but then the images were there and were suggested to more people. Yes, Chiara says they are severely underpaid, and indeed one of these people in the documentary, she says, but the alternative for me was to collect garbage and sell it. Then Chiara says kept under NDAs in order not to discuss what they see or what they are required to do. Yes. And to come, and already social media are based on AI algorithm for recommendation, algorithm for serving you personalized content, or content that is viral. But the same problem is already here for AI, because ChatGPT and friends do not start insulting you or suggesting you to kill yourself or whatever, just because there are, again, hundreds of thousands of people underpaid who have to remove text and images for less than $2 per hour. Here is famous newspaper article by Time on Kenyan workers. Text and images, and a famous open source and university managed data set of images, of millions of images, has been recently discovered that it contained also pedopornographic images. And for years, no one realized that it was the case. So it's a difficult and horrific job in some cases. Kate Crawford continues saying that Google image search does not show you the obsession that big tech has for time, where AI here is used to control and monitor people. Here is a time clock written everywhere in an Amazon warehouse, where people has a bracelet with a clock on their wrist to monitor their performance and to coordinate them with the robots bringing boxes and getting data to substitute them. It does not show how technologies like face recognition are used in some autocratic countries to monitor minorities. It does not show the risk of autonomous weapons, which is another huge field for AI, ethics of AI. It does not show that social media are killing people with the TikTok challenges, but above all, a case that has been explicitly recognized as partly caused by social media by a judge. And it is the sad story of Molly Russell, a girl of 13-year-old in UK that killed herself after having been served by Instagram and YouTube 2,000 contents about suicide, incitation to suicide, and self-harm. The psychologist who helped the judge said that she cried for a week after looking all this material. Obviously, Meta, the owner of Instagram and Facebook, said that they regret for what happened, that it was not possible, not foreseen, that they will do their best to change. But again, like in the case before of Instagram, this content should have not been in the platform, but above all, should not have been suggested, recommended to a girl as something interesting for her, because personalization means increasing the so-called user experience by providing content that is interesting. And probably the girl who probably was already depressed and looked on some search bar for something about suicide or self-harm, the algorithm understood that what was her interest. But unfortunately, it's not a problem of single people, but it's a problem at the level of society, because in Bangladesh, in Ethiopia, and in Myanmar has been shown that social media had a role in the killing of minorities. In case of Myanmar, of the Buddhist minority, of the Muslim minority of Rohingya, and the United Nations recognized that it was Facebook was inciting genocide, which is not a light word. And if you another suggested reading, recent one, the book Careless People. You see, there is the story of how Facebook made everything to get the junta of Myanmar to open Facebook to get more customers and increase their user experience. But is not the problem only of the developing countries, like in the three examples before, because you remember what on the 6th of January 4 years ago happened at Capitol Hill, where the social media had an important role. But on the guy with the buffalo horns, we will be back in a moment. And the problem has been recognized at the highest level. For example, the Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who is one of the most important at Capitol Hill, in a recent hearing, said explicitly, sorry, please close the microphone unless you want to talk, said to Mark Zuckerberg a very, very heavy thing. Yeah? He said, you have blood in your hands. You have a product that's killing people, among which Molly Russell. Just so we end this part here to change argument, some suggested readings from the Nobel Prize for Literature Kazuo Ishiguro, who is obviously of Japanese origin, but is a UK writer. I guess 4 or 5 years ago, he wrote Clara and the Sun, which is a small novel that on the relationships between robots and human that starts with the first words, when we were new. As you know, Kazuo Ishiguro always used the perspective of the protagonist. The other novel, less sweet, not about AI, is some years ago. It was part of the motivations for the Nobel Prize, besides The Remains of the Day, and it is Never Let Me Go. It's not about AI, it's about biotechnologies, but the topic, the main message is relevant for us, because the main message is how much we are, as humans, are willing to go in the trade-off between our interest and the interests of others using the technology. I don't say more because otherwise I really spoiled this extremely interesting and deep reading. So after this small pause, let's go forward. We will talk, or we will make a panoramic of many points from manipulation of users, bias, explainability, the rhetoric point of view, the problem of copyright, privacy, surveillance, and so on. So we will not address in deep some specific problem, but we will try to have a panoramic picture of the many problems. And to change argument, I ask you if you have seen this picture. Surely it has not appeared much in Italy, but elsewhere, yes. Have you seen this picture in the newspapers? No? But you surely all know what this picture refers to. Please.
Tiananmen Square.
Yes, and what's strange? the revolt on the 89 in Tiananmen Square by students against the Chinese government. But what's strange in this specific picture?
The guy is taking a selfie.
Yes, in 1989 it was not possible. And since probably it's not possible today to bring a tank in Tiananmen Square, this picture is clearly
Fake.
fake, created by AI. And why I show you this picture, which is not particularly interesting, because some months ago, Google Images, again, when you looked for tank man, which is the English phrase for referring to that episode that you see on the left, appeared as first result on Google Images. A fake image as a first search result, and without Google being able to give an explanation. Now it is still there because 404 Media, which is an online newspaper dealing with digital technologies and that showed the problem correctly, now is there, and there is a reason. That is the story of this problem. But imagine could have happened on 6th of January if a fake image of, for example, the assassination of the new president of US would have appeared on Google or on a social media. Already in this way, there has been several deaths, among which a couple of policemen who suicided themselves months after the episode for the shock. So we are discussing the problems of generative AI, starting from the fake and the risk that these fake are not distinguishable from reality, or maybe are distinguishable but too late if they appear in some, let's say, emotional, critical moments like the 6th of January. And while I was making these slides, as you see, I tried to look nuclear plant and AI on Google image search again, and what do you notice? This is from yesterday evening.
Full of blue.
It's strange. You can try also yourself on your Google web page. What does it show?
There are no images of problems or incidents.
No. I didn't look for incident. I just look nuclear plant AI.
Shows the 3 Mice Island. It looks like
And the rest instead, most of the other pictures,
AI generated.
AI generated. On something quite plain like nuclear plant and AI, and it's completely filled by, and even if you go below, it's really filled already by AI generated images, which is unexpected. Also because I guess whatever AI algorithm could filter out most of them, but Google decided not to do it. Generative AI, so you have nowadays many systems for ChatGPT, Copilot, Llama from Meta, Claude from Anthropic, Gwen from Alibaba, I guess, Mistral in France, Gemini from Google, and last but not least, the whale of DeepSeek, that, coming back to the geopolitical aspects, when it has been announced some weeks ago, it led to a crash in Wall Street market. Then the market recovered, but you see, just a news that can create a possible economic crisis. Or these are text-to-text AI generators, but you have also many models, so-called diffusion models, from text to images, like DALL-E 3, now also ChatGPT, news of 10 days ago, makes images, Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, and so on, so forth, creating images, but probably now you have a mix of LLM and diffusion models called large multimodal models. The technology behind large language models, but we will not enter in the details, has been, it appeared in 2017 by a paper from Google, Attention is All You Need, Creating the Transformer Technology, an evolution of deep networks to take into account the fact that words are in form sequences. But we'll just say very few words. What are the problems? Well, the first problem one can notice, besides fakes, deep fakes, is that if you ask, for example, this is Stable Diffusion, for pictures of judges, engineers, doctors, politicians, CEOs, lawyers, you get mostly
White men.
white men, and more than the reality, because, for example, in the average, there are more female lawyers than the ones in this picture. And if you look for dishwashers, fast food workers, janitors, you get not white men. And if you look for teachers, cashiers, social workers, housekeepers, you get not white women, more again than in the reality. So first problem, generative AI is made of neural networks, learned from examples, and so it learned what it has seen in the world with all the imbalances. But the question, and this refers to one of the topic we mentioned before, which is there a technological solution for every technological problem? Probably not. And Google with Gemini tried to be the first in the class and tried to make the system more, let's say, provocative, woke. And when you ask from military from the Nazi army, you would get Afro-American, African soldiers, Asian soldiers, female soldiers, which are not possible. If you ask for the image of a pope, you get female popes and black popes. If you look for the founding fathers, they are unrealistic. If you look for the founders of Google, you get Asian people. Why? Because the Asian community is quite present in the IT world. But they are not Larry Page, Sergey Brin. And the solution was just remove the problem. You cannot generate images of that, as you cannot generate many other images or texts. DeepSeek has been criticized because it was aligned with the political values of the Chinese government, but in reality, if you try to generate something from ChatGPT or whatever LLM from America, you get the same censorship in many cases. Then someone tried to make fun of the problem and asked for a white beard to see if you got a grizzly or black brown beard or whatever. But in this case, it worked. But the question is the following one. Which is the right result? What would we really wanted to have to solve the bias problem? In the case of the historical problem, maybe the next version of Gemini will read some books and will understand that most of the ideal German Nazi army soldier was Aryan. But if you were making a dystopic graphic novel, for example, for the Man of High Castle of Philip Dick, would it be reasonable? Probably yes. And in this case, what would we really want? That Google does not, that returns only male white popes or not? Because in theory, you could have a black pope as a next pope. If you take the Conclave movie, which is quite realistic, at some point, the likely outcome was an African pope. So it is possible. And a female pope is not in this moment possible. But if we make a poll among all Catholics around the world, are we sure that they would not accept a female pope or not? So which is the correct solution? Thus, the conclusion, and we will prove further evidence later, is that this is not a technological problem that can be solved technologically. It is a political choice. The problem is who makes this choice? Google engineers, the government, the Congress, the people. In this moment, probably the Google engineers, and they will drive biases or correction of biases in the way they prefer or they think it is right, but it is not probably shared or acceptable to the majority of us. So pay attention when they say that they will find a solution, as it happened for the poor Google engineers. It does not always work if it is only a technological solution.
Sorry to interrupt.
Please.
I have a question. Where a bias can be considered wrong or right? For example, let's say if I want a picture of a person, of a man, sorry, and they show me just a picture of people, sorry, with short hair. It's of course a bias, but it's statistically correct. So where is the point in which a bias is wrong?
Yeah, indeed. The problem is that it is an open question. It is wrong depending on who you ask to. Different communities have different ideas. You can decide to stick to the majority, or you may decide to rebalance for some reason, but at that point you get into trouble. One of the reasons why President Donald Trump has been elected has been because many people who were not in the US did not agree with some kind of rebalances that have been labeled simplicistically as woke to rebalance biased situation. Let's say employment by ethnic minorities. So there is even in the standard non-technological reality, there is the problem. In the everyday reality, there is this problem. Who decides? When you get into the digital world, you have the more complicated problem that this technology work for all the world. And the Google engineer decides what all the remaining part of the world will look at, except for people, for example, using DeepSeek in China and elsewhere. And if you make a test with DeepSeek, you see very subtle different point of views, which are correctly point of views of different people. So when you test DeepSeek, you see how biased are also politically, culturally the generative AI from US. It's really something that makes an let's say awakening on the technology we are using. Please.
I think that the majority of people is very traditional. So in my opinion, you cannot change a situation by clicking and inserting a lot of woke images in the internet to change. You must apply these filters for years, so the people can accept it. This is my opinion.
Yeah, it depends if you want, but again, who? The government, the Congress, the people, a foreign government. It's a political, it must be addressed as a political issue, like many other political issues. We cannot try to pretend that we can solve the problem with some technological hack. Please.
Yes, just to say that actually I think the issue is what you are saying, that this technology amplify what we already see in society, and also it standardizes some images. So the selection is also a question of making a standard. So you are not seeing whatever is not in the standard. And this is a problem, because on one side we have a society that is rich of differences, and what you get from the search on Google or other instruments is very, very standardized. And I read the book from Crawford on the map of AI, and I think that another issue very important is about the labeling of the data in the search. How the data were labeled. Some of these data are quite old, and they reflect a certain way of seeing society and things, and this is what we get back when we make the search.
Exactly. Thanks.
Sorry.
Oh.
I think there was another one speaking before me.
Yeah, I wanted to share a reflection that it seems to me that in the last, say, decade with the social media, we were kind of used to very close information bubbles. And now with these chatbots and AI tools, we are somehow all interacting with the same agent. So there is some breaking in this closure of the bubble, even if these tools can adapt the behavior somehow to the prompts. But it seems to me like a big shift.
Yeah, no, I think that it is temporary due to technical limitations, because I guess 10 days ago, Google announced that you can let Gemini access your data. For example, the queries you made on Google search, probably your mails, if you are on Gmail, the documents on Google Drive. At that point, you go back to your bubble. And the problem is that OpenAI doesn't have a social media or doesn't have a search engine, so it cannot personalize you and to create a better user experience, as they would say. Next one.
I think another problem with I would say hallucinations generated by Gemini, if we circle back to the black pope and the female pope, is that there is a lack of context and a lack of transparency, because in the end it all boils down to a political matter. Of course, the question is how do we imagine a fair society? Is it a diverse society? Is it a conservative and closed society? But what in my opinion, what is happening is that we have access to a tool. So we have the impression that it is a democratic tool because everyone can access it. Everyone can make questions and receive an answer. But what is not democratic at the moment is the creation of such tool. So we lack the context and the transparency to see what the processes are, because in the end, if whether we get inclusive or non-inclusive results, that is a superimposed decision from a closed circle of people. So in the end, what I really think is needed is more transparency from the companies that are developing AI, but also a more democratic approach in the developing itself, not only a more transparent, not only more transparency from those companies.
Yeah, I completely agree. Mind only that the female pope is not an hallucination, is the hack of Google engineers to avoid having only white male popes. We have other people.
Thank you.
Please.
Professor, I have a question. When you say it's not a technical way to solve it, it's a choice of the politics, do you mean that we can freely impact the output of the AI? And I'm wondering if there is any bias that is generated by AI itself or it learns itself.
Any bias, you said? Yeah, I guess we should. We should take more control on how technology is created. For sure, we must act. That's why at the beginning I defined CPEA, our society, also an advocacy organization. It's not just a scientific society. And so we should have our say on how the biases learned by these machines are dealt with, either leaving as it is or changing, but in which way do we want to change, or even more simply to make to let people be aware that there are these biases when something is generated by AI.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks to all the questions. Is anyone else? Okay. Just a very, very few words on how generative, or better, not generative, LLMs work. The idea is that they mostly work on words. They create tables where each row is each row represents a word, cat, kitten, dog, houses, and so on, and each column is labeled again with another word. Sorry, close the mic if you don't want to say something. And each cell represents the frequency of co-occurrence in the same sentence of the two words. So cat is pretty frequent with living being, very frequent with feline, not with human, even less with verb of plural, because there is no sentence says that cat is a verb or something like that. And these are huge tables because there are hundreds of thousands of words in every language, and they create a multidimensional space, which simplified into spaces, just to get the idea, can capture the fact that cat and kitten are closer than dog, and dog and cat and kitten are closer to each other with respect to houses. So it captures some generalization, but only starting from statistics of words. And simplifying it a little just to make it understandable, the algorithm for learning in the neural network of ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on is the following one. They download all the text in the web in all languages. Then they start from the first sentence. Let's say the cat eats the mouse, and create a sort of quiz. It removes a word and try to see what the network replies. So it take the cat eats dots, and the network, which is a tabula rasa, completely blank at the first turn, maybe replies with the continuation. It completes the sentence. The cat eats the stars. Obviously, it doesn't make any sense. But I ask to you, how can the algorithm understand alone that the cat eats the stars is not a meaningful sentence? It doesn't know anything. It is at the first iteration, the first sentence, the first reply. There is an obvious, simple, and powerful solution. Compare with the case of a diagnostic system. In this simple example I made, there were the digitalized X-ray, and there was the diagnosis of the doctor, obviously, saying that it was ill or not. Here, it is more simple. We have just the sentences, but how, after generating a sentence, ChatGPT can know whether his result is correct or not?
The probability?
No, it's at the first step. The probability, it's even simpler.
Humans say
No humans.
comparing,
That's the powerful thing.
perhaps comparing what comes out from its elaboration and what's already present in the internet, let's say.
Exactly. It looks on the internet that it downloaded already. If there is the sentence, the cat eats the stars. Is there such a sentence? No. So let's penalize in the network the path that led to the wrong sentence and go on. At a certain point, you will say, for example, the cat eats the dog. Is there such a sentence on the web? No. But still, it has understood that you eat only things that are eatable, made of flesh. and then so on so forth. Maybe it will say the cat eats the milk. Okay, it is not the original sentence, but on the web probably you find this sentence. So it is correct, and it goes on. Next quiz, next question. The cat dots the mouse. So it will generate a random verb, it will look on the internet, it will correct it, and so on and so forth for every sentence in every language. And almost magically, from this simple algorithm that foresee the next word, which technically is called next token prediction, it is able to generate an entire PhD thesis, starting not from a sentence, but from many scientific articles. Okay, don't try it yourself at home, but that's the general idea. Even looking at a very simple problem, foreseeing the next missing word in a sentence, it is able to learn to reply to whatever, or better, reply is the wrong sentence, the wrong word. It is able, given an input also of millions of words, to generate a set of words, maybe hundreds of thousands of words, that represent the most probable continuation of the input of the system, which is really magical. And if you, as every one of you has probably tried, it works pretty well. But in the next minutes, we will look at what are the problems of this approach. First of all, when I say it downloads all the web, then it means that it downloads the New York Times, it downloads Wikipedia, The Guardian, or whatever, but it downloads also very politically oriented material. For example, the Russia Today propaganda website or the alt-right Breitbart website, and so on and so forth. And so these systems will return also this point of view, that it depends again on you if you want or not. But you cannot choose. They just do it, and you have to align. Then there is the hallucination problem mentioned above. Before, at some time, the system is returning results that are not true, and it has not seen anywhere else. The problem, it is still a problem to be solved. There are improvements, often because the improvement is that it generates the sentence, then you look on Google if the sentence is realistic or not, and more complicated mechanism. Probably hallucinations are due to the fact that in this huge network with all the knowledge, some parts are, let's say, as a metaphor, more dense, some other are less dense of information, and so the system that has always to produce the most probable continuation of the input, it returns something that is the most probable but not so probable. But it's a problem that is improving. At the beginning it was quite serious because, for example, for scientists, if you ask for a reference to a journal article or to a book, a scientific book, the system can return, for example, 5 correct examples of references and 5 that look quite nice because the author is relevant, the title sounds well, the journal is relevant, the date is probable, but the reference does not exist. And the recent paper on LLMs used specifically for search as a substitute of Google search, in some cases, in some domains, return 60% of wrong answers, which is really too much to be useful. But probably there will be some improvement in the future. I would end here, then I leave some minutes for other questions. Some months after the publishing of ChatGPT in November 22, a famous philosopher, the late Daniel Dennett, famous for his books on consciousness in particular, on the Atlantic made a very, very harsh criticism of generative AI, titled "The Problem with Counterfeit People." Companies using AI to generate fake people are committing an immoral act of vandalism and should be held liable. It compares the problem with the problem of counterfeit money. Since there was money in the form of shells or grains or whatever, salt coins, there has been people counterfeiting money. And since the beginning, the laws prosecuted those people creating counterfeit money, sometimes harshly, even with death sentences, death penalties. And the problem to justify such an harsh penalty is not that they were becoming rich illegally. The problem is much worse, is that fake money decrease the trust on money, and money works only because every one of us trusts that it is real money and non fake one. But also, says Dennett, relationships among us work only because there is trust among people. But if you put among the people counterfeit people, artificial agents that try to pretend to be us, you are decreasing the trust that is at the basis of the relationships among people in our society. And so Dennett is make a very harsh judgment of the future that we are going to. But I would stop here to leave you leave to you for some time for some questions, both on the content, but also on procedures, exams, and so on. I put again in the chat the form for proving your attendance if you need it. Okay, there are some questions here. Or otherwise, just switch your mic on.
Professor, I had a question about the next token prediction. I wanted to make sure that I understood correctly. So the next token prediction works purely as a quantitative guess.
Yes. Okay. And unsupervised.
So let's say a lie told the more time on the internet is selected on where. Okay.
Exactly. And indeed, some days ago, there was an article saying that the propaganda from Russia on the social media adopted as a strategy not just to convince people, but to put so many statements from their side promoting their point of view, so that so that LLMs are already being biased, and sometimes they reply in the way desired by who is making this propaganda. Because by putting so many times the same information on social media, on the web, it is collected by the crawlers downloading the information on the web, and thus driving the replies of the large language model in their direction.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? A question about the recording. No, it is publicly, made publicly available on the CPEA website in the page of the PhD course. I also will put also the slide shortly. There is no other
Professor?
question. Applause, please.
May I ask a question? Is about the relationship between algorithmic registration or the governance in AI system and the AI models and the AI services. And how are these elements connected?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Which elements connected?
Yes, my question is about the definition about AI algorithm and the LLM and the AI services, and what's the relationship about them?
Between the services and the algorithms?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess what I can say is to explain the difference between ChatGPT and the GPT, whatever its number, behind the chatbot. Because the AI algorithm is the GPT, the general pre-trained transformer, which is trained, as I explained, and given an input, just replies with the next word, which is fed again in input, and you get all the reply as long as you want. Because the ChatGPT is just the interface, but it adds much information to the algorithm. When you type a question, it is not fed to the algorithm directly, but it is surrounded by many information saying at the algorithm how to behave. So it says, you have to reply as you were a wise, conscious and competent person. You must reply politely. You must think step by step, or whatever. So there is a gap between what we see and what the algorithm is provided. It receives much more information. For example, some questions are filtered even before being given to the algorithm, or vice versa, the reply of the algorithm is not provided to you. Sometimes you can even see it, because in the chatbot interface, you see it's writing something, then it goes back because it understood that for some reason the answer was not something that can be said, or something like that. So there is, you rightly point out that between the service available to people and the real algorithm, the engine behind it, there is a further level in both direction, in input and output, making things that we are not aware of and that we can only change partially. If you go to the option, to the configuration of ChatGPT, you can add some information. You can say, I want that it replies like a millennial or a Z generation or whatever, to reply in a friendly way, to avoid to capitalize words or whatever you want. But it is only added to something else that you cannot see, and in many cases is kept secret. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
There is some consideration in the chat. Is not bias rooted in any existing culture, in any possible combination of data sets combination? Even if you tried correcting the bias with affirmative action, would not it be somewhat of a bias, or at least yes, and that's typical of all political problems. Even when you make some new legislation, it will be biased toward the interests of someone, maybe the majority, maybe the minority, maybe some wealthy minority or whatever. So there is probably no technical solution. There is only a political one, leaving some bias, but that it is agreed by some part of the community, and not just the Google engineer. Okay, thanks again, and see you next week. Mind that it is at 2:00 p.m. with Tiziana Catarci talking more on exactly the problem of bias. See you. Ciao.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you. See you. Grazie.
Thank you. Bye.
Grazie.
Thank you. See you.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Grazie, arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Grazie.